Cool. All right. So, welcome back to Racial and Ethnic Minorities. Um, Today we are discussing the racialization of Islamophobia and deconstructing myths about Muslims. So that is what we'll be engaging with for the week. So hopefully you are reading your readings for this week. You're going to have a couple of assignments for this week about this topic. You also will have this lecture, and I encourage you to take down some notes, write down the key parts from this lecture, because this will be things that you will need to know for your exam. So by now you should have gotten your midterm exams, your exam one. You should have those grades already. If not, it is coming soon. You should also have, by the time you watch this, you may also have your midterm grade. So it kind of gives you an idea of where you are in the class. And again, that midterm grade is just to give you an idea. It's not, your final grade. It's just to kind of show where you are. If you have any questions or you want to comment or you want to talk about anything related to your grade, if you're worried, feel free to come to me, talk to me, we can discuss. If you're worried about anything, if you like where your grade is going, if you want to figure out how you can make your grade better, let me know and we'll sit down and we'll talk about it. Let me know during office hours. You can either email me and we can set up a time to talk, or you can just come into the office hours and we can discuss as well. So yeah, that is that. Also, I was going to talk about this on the next slide, but while it's in my brain, I just want to go ahead and talk about it now. Your final paper, I talked a lot about it on a previous lecture. I will give you an example of what I want this paper to look like. This is an example from a student in a totally different school. But this is an example, and it was some of the readings were the same as this class, and then some were different. But you can get an idea of how I want you to integrate readings and how I want you to integrate this into your bio and your thoughts about yourself and what how your ideas around your body has changed as a raced body, right? As a person who is inside of a racialized body and living in a raced world, a world where the race is important. It plays a role. It dictates advantages and disadvantages for a lot of people, right? So I'll give you an example. You'll see that example either in your modules or maybe I'll upload it somewhere else, but I'll let you know. But it'll probably be in your modules. All right, with that being said, let us keep going. So you have a quiz this Friday, quiz 3. And it will be available on March 4th, same as all your other quizzes on Friday. It will cover the reading essay 4, Racialization of Islamophobia. So that is what you need to read. That is what you need to study for the answers for this quiz, okay? And the quiz will have 5 to 10 questions related to the reading. The questions to the quiz will be available under the files reading quizzes entitled Quiz 3, Islamophobia. And it will be available at 12 a.m. on Friday. So you have 11:59 p.m. on Thursday and then 12 a.m. on Friday. And then it'll be available 12 a.m. on Friday all day. You will have all day to complete the quiz until 11:59 p.m. On Friday, March 4th. And that is when you should complete it. Once 12 a.m. Saturday hits, it is late and therefore it cannot be graded. Separate Microsoft Word document, you will record your answers to the questions. You will go to the assignments link, click on reading quizzes, find the portal that says Quiz 3, Islamophobia. You will upload your answers there. No submissions after the deadline will be graded under any circumstances. If you have any questions, reach out to me during office hours and I'll be more than happy to assist you. Deadline for the quiz again is March 4th, 11:59 p.m. on Friday. So please make sure that you set aside that time to complete the quiz. Yes. Any questions, let me know. I already gave you the example of the final paper that will be available to you in your module or somewhere on your Canvas. More than likely it'll be in your module. All right, let us continue. So, talking about Islamophobia, deconstructing myths about Muslims. One question I have, which I think is important to discuss when we're talking about Muslims and Islam, are some of the historical, or is related to some of the historical discourse around Islam and Muslims in general. Okay. Some people may ask the question, this is a race class, race and ethnic minorities. Why are we talking about a religion? What's the point of talking about? I don't see an essay on Christianity. I don't see an essay on Judaism. Why are we talking about Islam and Muslims in a race class? Now, it is a part of an intersection because religion is a social identity. So a person can be of a certain race, of a certain class, of a certain gender, of a certain sexuality, of a certain educational status, and of a certain religion. So in terms of intersectionality, it makes sense. But outside of that, it doesn't. So why are we talking about race? I mean, why are we talking about Islam in a race class? Well, I will show you why in a second. So when we think about, from a historical standpoint, why we're having this conversation about Muslims and Islam and Islamophobia and a race class, it's difficult to have this conversation without bringing up one specific event. And if you look at your PowerPoint, I asked the question, what event caused the biggest increase in Muslim hate in the past 20 years? About 21 years. Well, 20 years, 20, 21 years. What event? Think about it. Pause the video if you want. Most of you, some of you may have been born the year this happened, or maybe a little after. Some of you, obviously, people as old as me, were born way before, but we remember this day. And that is actually a clue, because the theme for that day is never forget or remember. And we're talking about 9/11, September 11th, right? That was the day that it was said that Al-Qaeda, an extremist group in the Middle East, bombed the Twin Towers and killed a large number of US citizens, right? Also, I believe the Pentagon was bombed at that time as well. And so that event changed the course of history. It changed the United States. The US would never be the same. It changed the way that we get on planes. Now that you have to go through Homeland Security, that did not exist before 9/11. Homeland Security did not exist. You could go and get on a plane and you could even meet a person at the gate. Now you have to go through security and then meet them later on, which is what you all are probably more used to. But before that, it was much less stringent because something like this had never happened in terms of planes before in the modern day. So that was a big event, shaped everything. But one of the things that 9/11 did was it sparked this growing sense of Islamophobia, because the people that were a part of what was known as Al-Qaeda, or this extremist group, this anti-American, American hate group, they were known to be, they were all kind of described as these Muslims, as Muslim people. So because they were all a part of the Muslim community, and this particular group had enacted an attack on the United States, it caused many citizens to say to themselves, Muslims attack America, Muslims don't like America, so we don't like Muslims because Muslims are violent. Now, this was done by a select group of people, not all Muslims, there are billions of them in the world, but a select group of Muslims decided to enact this attack. And because of that, this growing sense of Islamophobia took place in the United States. And there were all kinds of videos and reports, surveys, pictures, just all kinds of things that promoted anti-Muslim, anti-Islam rhetoric, especially during that time. Over time, it kind of died down, but it was definitely still something that it was, and it's still something that remains a key part of U.S. sentiments. Okay. And so this hate for Muslims that came out, and it's not that it didn't exist before 9/11, but the fires were stoked after 9/11, is called Islamophobia. And Islamophobia is defined as the unfounded fear of Islam and the negative experiences surrounding it. And what the author argues is that in order for us to really understand Islamophobia, we can't just look at it as a religion. We also must understand this within the context of race, because there are a lot of similarities. And so notice one of the key concepts in this definition is unfounded. Islamophobia is unfounded. Islamophobia is based on myths. It's based on things that we think or assumptions that we make about all Muslim people that are just not true. But people believe these things, and then it causes this fear, and it relates to negative experiences that Muslims have because of this unfounded fear that non-Muslims have about Muslims. But according to the author, if we're going to talk about this thing, then we need to put it within the context of race. See, most people look at religion and race as separate entities. And generally speaking, they are. Christianity, in reality, there's no race connected to Christianity. All different people are Christians. Same way with Muslims. All kinds of different people are Muslims. Jews, same thing. Jews is a little bit different because Judaism is a religion, but then to be Jewish is also an ethnicity as well. That's a little different. Buddhism, Confucianism, Zoroastrianism, Hinduism. All of these things are religions or belief systems, but they don't necessarily evoke any type of racialized description. Now, we can have stereotypes, for sure. If I was to say, oh, if I were to tell you, hey, I met a friend or I met somebody yesterday and they were Hindu, there's a picture that comes to your head. You're going to automatically think they may be Indian or from the Middle East. If I say that I met somebody who was a Buddhist, there's a picture that might come to your head. Now, the Hindu person could have been white. If I say that this person was Buddhist, you may automatically think that they are of Asian descent. Because Buddhism is a very popular religion in Asia, very popular in China. Hinduism is a very popular religion in India. So you may automatically go there. If I say Muslim, same thing. You may have an idea. Even if I were to say Christian, a person may automatically think of a white person or a black person, because Christianity is a major religion or major belief system in the United States, and particularly in the West. Particularly among white people, but also black people, Black Americans, and places that the colonizers in the West influenced. A lot of what they did, they brought Christianity with them. So religion and race are oftentimes seen as separate entities, but sometimes our minds can connect them and find more in common with them than we realize. Even if we see that at first, we also know, well, a Chinese person could be Christian, a black person could be Buddhist, a white person could be Hindu, a Native American could be Muslim, right? People can join whatever religion or practice whatever belief system that they want. But there are some connections. Okay. So when we look at race and religion, it's important for us, first of all, to break down this notion of race and racism. And that's what the author does. The author, Steve Garner and Sahir Salad, I believe. Those are their names. And so if we go to page 37, we see that there are three elements of racism. One, racism has a set of ideas. Two, racism has a historical power relationship. And then three, racism perpetuates forms of discrimination. First thing, racism provides, and we're going to jump back into religion and Islam in a second. Just talking about race. Racism is a set of ideas, oftentimes what we call an ideology. Okay. And this ideology of race is that the human race, humankind, is divisible into these very distinct, unique races. And these races have natural characteristics that come from their culture, that come from their physical appearances, or both. There is this biological deterministic quality that exists within the race, meaning there are things that occur within a person's race that are connected to their biology. Race is biological. That is an ideology. Obviously, we've learned early on in this semester, race is not biological, race is social. But a lot of people believe, or one of the key elements of racism is a person believes that race is biological, meaning if you are a part of a certain race, you are naturally prone to certain things. Those are, or that's how stereotypes are created. You tall, you black, you athletic. You white, you smart, and your business savvy. You're Asian, you're smart. You're Latino, you work hard. So there are these stereotypes that we've created that come from this false biological explanation of a person's race. Because their culture, because their physical appearance, there is this ideology that exists. So that is one element of racism. Another one is the historical power of relationships. Historical power of relationships. So when groups become racialized and they are treated as if these characteristics that are seen as natural, people believe are innate in each member of that group. And with that innate characteristic comes the do's and the don'ts, the haves and the have-nots, the good and the bad, the top and the bottom. That is the power struggle. So you take these people, you racialize them by calling them black, colored, African American, whatever. You take this other group, you call them white, Caucasian, whatever, European. And then you push forth forms of discrimination. These are the practices, whether it be you deny their access to material, all the way up to genocide, the practices that are put in place and ascribed to each one of these groups. This creates the power dynamic that is central to the ideology of racism. I just went backwards with that. So I showed you how the prejudice creates the power structure that is element, or that is evident, that is a key, that is a key element or evidentiary of the ideology of race or racism. So these are the three elements of racism. And racism takes on many different forms. You have slavery, you have genocide, you have exploitation, you have Jim Crow, you have psychological, you have microaggression. So many different ways. Almost genocide. And so that's where race comes in. Now, how does religion play a role? Well, first of all the major world faiths, including a variety of people, drawn from people of all races. All the major world faiths include a variety of people drawn from all these racial groups. And so Islam is no exception. Islam is no exception. Islam draws from people of various racial groups, not just one. Just like Christianity. You can see all different types of Christians. You drive up and down Jacksonville, you'll see all different types of churches. You'll see all different types of congregations. Some congregations are more diverse than others, but each racial group or ethnicity puts their own spin on how they approach Christianity based on their culture. And so again, Islam is no exception. You have all different types of Muslims. The person who was really affected by this was Malcolm X. Malcolm X was a Black leader, thinker, philosopher. He was a leader of the Nation of Islam. He was Muslim, part of the Black Muslim movement in the United States. He was a very powerful man. He was a political leader. He was a social influencer. And he had a lot of cachet in the Black community and in the larger political world because of his keen intellect and his courageous spirit. Malcolm X converted to Islam while in prison for robbery. But he would say it was because him and his friends were in relationships with white women, because they also did the robbery, but they did not do the time that him and his friend did. So he would say it was because he was in relationship with white women, but it was covered up by this botched robbery that they committed. I think it was in Boston. Went to prison, converted to Islam, came out, and joined the Nation of Islam, the Black Muslim movement. He was a proud Muslim. He found his place. He found his space where he felt he belonged. He found his identity. And he was a very strict Muslim. Whatever the rules were, he was going to follow those rules to the very end, even if it meant death. Then, as part of the regulations of Islam, he had to take a trip to Mecca. Mecca is one of the foundational spaces of Islam. A very important place, just like Jerusalem is a very important place in Christianity. Bethlehem is a very important place in Christianity. Mecca is a very important place in the Muslim tradition. And as part of the 5 pillars of faith, every Muslim, if they are able in their life, have to make what they call a pilgrimage to Mecca. They must go if they're able. And so Malcolm X, who had been ousted from the Black Muslim group because of differences with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was the leader of that group, took that time to take a trip, a pilgrimage to Mecca. And while he was there, he saw this interesting connection between race and religion. Or actually, there was a difference. His connection between race and religion was disrupted. I think that's a better saying. It was complicated once he did that. I want you to click on that link, and I want you to listen to this part of the movie Malcolm X. You may have seen it, you may not have seen it. But what he says in this part of the film comes directly from the autobiography of Malcolm X, as told to Alex Haley. And this is how Malcolm X felt once he went to Mecca and experienced Mecca and then left. So click on that link, watch that, and then return to the video. And so you can see from Malcolm X's trip to Mecca that his idea about race and religion was disrupted because he understood Muslims as being Black people. Those were the only Muslims he had ever come in contact with, the Muslims within his group, the Nation of Islam, the Black Muslim movement. And he was comfortable with that. He was comfortable with Islam being a Black religion, Black group. He saw Christianity as the white man's religion. He didn't understand how Black people could be Christians who could align themselves with the religion of the people that were oppressing them. So for him, and for many people within his organization, the Muslim for the Black man, the Muslim for Black people, or the religion for the Black man, the religion for Black people was Islam. But how did race and racism shape the way Malcolm X saw religion? How did it shape the way he saw religion? He saw religion as part of the escape. This is the way I can battle the racism that was done to me. He experienced racism very early. His dad was a part of the Garvey movement. His dad encouraged Black people to stand up for themselves, to fight for themselves. And he was captured by the Klan, and he was laid on some train tracks by the Klan, and they waited for a train to come, and they split his father in half. Him and his brothers and sisters, now without a father, their mother, who looked very much white, but she was half Black, half white. She tried to raise all those kids herself, could not. She dealt with a lot of racism. She dealt with a lot of hatred, threats from the Klan, and eventually she went mentally insane. She had to go to an asylum. So now him, Malcolm X, and his brothers and sisters now have to be put up for adoption. So now they have to go into the system until someone could take care of them. All of these things affected Malcolm. So he saw race, he saw racism, he saw the hatred that he experienced at an early age when he was a teenager. And his teachers told him that he would never be anything. He wanted to be a lawyer, and they said he couldn't because he was Black. Saw himself going down the wrong path, went to prison, found Islam. And Islam was the thing that he said could be used to help battle this oppression that Black people were dealing with. It helped make him a better person, and he believed that it could help make a lot of Black people better. So how did race and racism shape the way Malcolm X saw religion? He saw religion as an escape. He saw religion as empowering, particularly Islam, as an empowering tool to be used to liberate Black people. How did his pilgrimage to Mecca change the way he understood race? Think about that. I would say, how did his pilgrimage to Mecca change the way he understood race? Because now he's seeing religion as something that may not divide racial groups, but maybe can even unite racial groups. He says in the clip, "This was my first time drinking from a cup of a Muslim that had blonde hair and blue eyes. I'm praying next to white people, and we are praying to Allah together." That was new for him, because he criticized Christians for praying to the same God, Black Christians for praying to the same God as white Christians, and then wondering why they were still oppressed. So this is messing with Malcolm's head now. How can I pray to the same God as this white man? How can I pray to Allah? And I looked at them as the enemy. So he's beginning to have a different understanding about race. He's beginning to have a much more complicated understanding of race and religion and how they come together, but then also how do they divide? And then maybe this is within the context of region. In the United States, maybe it is more division. In Mecca, maybe it is more inclusive. Who knows? But this is where the complexities of both of these entities come into play, right? So now we're gonna go back to the reading to see what our author talks about when looking at Islam as, or by racializing Islam and racializing this religion, to see how we can add to the discussion of this question right here on the next slide. how can religion be raced? How can religion be raced? So race has been defined, and we talked about it earlier, as these cultural and physical characteristics that is used to help create a set of ideas. That ideology that we talked about, create these set of ideas that then form these power dynamics that is then used to perpetuate discrimination. So you have cultural and physical characteristics at the very center of what race is. Well, that same thing, cultural and physical characteristics, are things that people define in Islam, because Islam has cultural characteristics, and then there are physical characteristics around what people deem to be Muslim. Because Islam is a religion and Islam has culture. There are cultural characteristics, and then there are these physical descriptions of what Muslims are supposed to display. And so when we start to race certain contexts, or you race certain concepts, you race a religion, this is what we mean when we say the racialization. And what racialization does is racialization does three things. It draws a line around members of a group. So you take a group of people, Native Americans, and then you draw a line around. You said, these people are the Native Americans. Then you instigate feelings. You instigate feelings of we-ness. These are Native Americans. This is what they do. This is how they behave. This is their history. The we-ness. They do this. We do this. These are the stereotypes. These are the characteristics. These are the descriptions of this group that we drew a line around. And then you ascribe particular cultural and social characteristics that may or may not be true. So these are Native Americans, which means they come from a tribe, which means they walk around with feathers in their head, or they are this, or they are poor, or they drink a lot, or whatever ideas we come up with that come from stereotypes in our society, that come from the media, that come from religion, that comes from our family members. So that's what racialization is. Take a group of people, put a line around them, you put together feelings of we-ness, they're all connected, and then you start to apply cultural and social characteristics to them. And these traits may or may not be true. Skin tone. For these Latino, Latinx people, all of them look like this. So we're gonna say they look like this. Their pigment is this. They all speak this language. They all speak Spanish. Okay, good. They're all gonna dress like this. Okay, they're all gonna practice this religion. They're all this. Okay, good. So you just throw these traits, these stereotypes, and they could all be false. But it doesn't matter because you're racializing a group of people. So those are the three things that you do when you racialize a group. Muslims and Jews historically have been the religious group that have been racialized because of their culture, because of their physical appearance, because of their dress. Muslims have been racialized because there is a line around all the members. Okay, so we have Muslims. This is who they are. And then they have this feeling of we-ness because we all are victims of the Islamophobia that came out of 9/11. There is this we-ness within the Muslim community. And then outside groups put on physical and cultural traits related to them. Muslims, well, you know them by what physical traits? They're typically darker skin or olive skin. They have beards. They wear a kufi. They, there are these certain physical characteristics that when you see them, you may say, oh, they're probably Muslim. And then there are these cultural traits: very religious, extremely religious, violent, pray 5 times a day, very strict, blah, blah, blah. So that is how you racialize Muslims. But same thing was done for Jews, particularly during what major event? The Holocaust. And so Muslim and Jews have historically been subject to racism because of their culture, because of their physical appearances, because of the way they look. And then oftentimes it was because of something that was happening in the larger society, and they were used as scapegoats. They were used as the scapegoats. World War I in Germany, calamities, unemployment, poverty, hunger. What's going on with the German society? What's going on with German citizens? They all on the breadline praying and begging for crumbs. And then somebody comes up with the idea it's the Jews' fault. They still got all the good banking jobs. They still have all the good education jobs. And the Germans are the ones suffering. And this is our country. We got to do something. So then they become the scapegoat and the reason for why Germany is in an underserved position. Muslims, the scapegoat. Who bombs the Twin Towers? Who bombs the Pentagon? Who kills all these people? A select group of Muslims. Oh, that means Muslims are violent. We need them as the scapegoat because now we have to go to war. Now this is going to disrupt our economy. Now this is going to make the United States citizens feel unsafe. We need somebody to blame. Just like Germans needed the Jews to blame after World War I, many US citizens believe Muslims were to blame after 9/11. Okay, so you see the racialization involved. Now let's look at this next slide. You see these two pictures. Islam, let's look at this first picture. It says, Islam will dominate the world. Muslims rise against the Crusaders. Jihad to defend the Muslims. All right? So we see that there's this group of people who are pro-Muslim, pro-Islam. And they're saying some things that seem to be very extreme. In some ways can even be perceived as violent. Dominate, rise against the Crusaders, defend. And they have some similar characteristics in terms of their physical features. So there is this racialization happening with these people. Then you look at this other image, this burning of the American flag, the US flag. And many people would say, yeah, this is extreme. What do you think? Is this extreme? Some may say yes. It's extreme. You're talking about dominating, rising up, and you're burning flags. It's a very violent act that shows an extreme hatred towards a specific group of people, a specific country. So it doesn't look too good. It may feel like religious extremism to some people. Now let's go to the next slide. A little different. Or is it? There's a picture of people dressed in white hoods. And they're in the church, or it appears to be a church. We don't know exactly what it is. But people in white hoods, we know them as the Ku Klux Klan. And there is this, it looks like a service happening. And on the back of the wall, it says Jesus saves, which leads us to believe that these people are Christian. Because Christians believe that Jesus saved the world. So it's most likely that these people are Christians. Also, what do we know about the Ku Klux Klan? They burn crosses. They terrorize people. They were responsible for the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of lynchings during the lynching era, 1880 to about 1930. They were responsible for a lot of the violent upheaval in the South and in the Midwestern parts of the United States. They professed a strong hatred for Black people, Jewish people, anybody who was not white, Protestant, Christian, Muslim people. They were, and they did it in the name of Christianity. They would pray before their rallies. They believed that they were doing the work of Jesus. They believed that they were doing the work of their Christian brothers by making sure that the United States and America stayed white, stayed Protestant, stayed Christian, and was not influenced by scoundrels, by ne'er-do-wells, by anybody who was not part of them, white, Christian. And they use this to carry out violent acts. So going back to the previous slide, these people, and some, I'm not saying these specific people, I don't know, but some people may say, yes, this could be extremely religious. This could be violent. If you're burning a flag, that is a sign of aggression. It would not be uncommon to think that whoever did burn that flag may not have ideas or even promote ideas about violence towards the people that represent that flag. That could be an idea. Is this picture, the next one, Jesus Saves with the Klan, any different? Yes, no, maybe. What are your thoughts? I would argue that there is no difference. That both symbolize religious extremism. Now we have more evidence about the Klan than we do about whatever group those people represent, if they represent a group at all. But we have actual evidence of the Klan and their violent aggression. However, both groups or both pictures, all the pictures, put out this belief, put out this idea that religion influences them towards violent aggression. So is there a difference between them? Probably not. But typically when we think about religious extremists, oftentimes we may not think about Christians. We may not even think about the Klan. What is seen as religious extremists oftentimes are people who are Muslim, who are darker skinned, who don't have traditional European features. So there is this racialization of Muslims that we have to talk about when we talk about Islamophobia. It's not just a fear of the religion, it is a fear of a certain race. It is a fear of a certain people that look a certain way. So now, when we talk about fear, once people begin to create fear in their minds around specific groups or people or communities, then they have to create a dialogue to support that fear. Whether the dialogue is true or not doesn't really matter. as long as we create an ideology. So then what do we have? We have these myths about Muslims, who they are, where they come from. So what are some myths about Muslims? Well, to start off this part of the dialogue, I want you to click on that link. And I want you to watch this video on some myths about Muslims. And you tell me, what are some myths that some people have about Muslims? And then come back to this, to the lecture. So, what are some of the things that you heard about Muslims that really came from US leaders? And then it was later on adopted by citizens. Some of the things that they said. One, they said we have to protect American citizens from Muslims, meaning that Muslims were looking to attack all of America. All of the Muslims wanted to attack all of the Americans, as if they are not a large part of the American or US population that are Muslim, that have served in the US military. Another thing they said, bomb the shit out of terrorists. That's big, meaning we want to kill them. That's genocide. That's literally genocidal language. That is the same exact language that Hitler used. What do we do with the Jews? Exterminate them. What do we do with these Muslims? Bomb the shit out of them. Now they said specifically bomb the shit out of terrorists. But then there is this connection between Muslims and terrorists that some of the people said. We believe that they want to terrorize our country. We have to protect American citizens from Muslims, meaning that the Muslims are looking to terrorize the country. And then if we believe that those people are terrorists and we want to bomb the shit out of terrorists, then that means you can replace terrorists with Muslims and say, we want to bomb the shit out of Muslims. But a large number of people killed in the terrorist attacks in Afghanistan when when US soldiers began to go to Afghanistan. And there was a war in Afghanistan and in Iraq and all these different areas in other Asian countries. A majority of the people that were killed, were they terrorists? They were regular citizens. These were regular people, not terrorists. But why were those citizens killed? Because there was this racialization of Muslims. There was this idea of what Muslims look like, the physical characteristics that we talked about, and how they behave, the cultural characteristics. And once those individuals were racialized, they were connected by race and by religion to be Muslim as a race. Therefore, they were targeted as being terrorists and then would be treated as such. And that is where this conversation, that is where these ideas about the racialization of Islamophobia, that's how they get applied. And so let's look at section, page 109, starting with in 2010. Let's see. Okay. In 2010, a Pew Research poll of 1,003 Americans found that 38% of Americans have an unfavorable view of Islam. 35% believe Islam is more likely than other religions to encourage violence, and 51% objected to a mosque being built near the site of the World Trade Center. All this despite the fact that 55% admit they know very little about Islam. And yet Americans rank Muslims second only to atheists as a group that doesn't share their vision of American society. So even though a lot of US citizens know very little about Muslims, there are all these myths, all of these assertions that are made about who they are, about what they're like, and why it's necessary to distance ourselves from them. So you have over a third of US citizens having an unfavorable view. You have over a third believing that Islam encourages violence more than any other one. And you have over half saying that a mosque should not be built next to the World Trade Center. Okay. But then if we look at this chart, and we have this kind of racialized idea about what Muslims look like, who is considered Muslim, it actually challenges that idea that it can be racialized, because Muslims are some of the most ethnically diverse, or is the most, or one of the most ethnically diverse faith communities in all of the world. 28% Black or African American, 23% Asian, Chinese, Japanese, 19% white. Pretty kind of even Steven a little bit. A little more here and there, a little more with the Black or African American, particularly in the United States. And then 14% Arab, 8% Hispanic, 2% Native American, and 5% other. Pretty diverse in terms of a faith community, at least in the United States. But there's this idea that most Muslims are of one race. They all look like this, and this is who they are. But what a lot of Christian US Americans don't realize is, guess what? They could have a potential ally in Muslims by just seeing them as a group with very similar ideas, especially when it comes to defending the war against terror. Most Muslims actually disagree and disagreed with, even at that time, the attack on US citizens. Muslims are actually some of the more peaceful people in the world. But just like you have religious extremists in the Christian tradition, you have religious extremists in the Muslim tradition. Just like you have the Ku Klux Klan, which is a religious extremist group, you also have religious extremist groups in the Muslim tradition. There's no difference. But Christian US, but Muslims are very conservative. Muslims do not like to go to war. A lot of Muslims don't. Islam is a very peaceful religion. Many Muslims are very, very devout, almost sometimes more devout than a lot of Christians in terms of how strict they are. There are certain Christian traditions that are very devout, but a very devout Muslim is, oof. And it's not a scary thing. It's not a fearful thing. It's just that they do not go against whatever it is that they believe. So there's a similarity there between extremely devout Christians and extremely devout Muslims, and a certain level of respect that they could have for each other if the racialization of Islamophobia was put to the side. Let's look at the first paragraph on page 112, and we can see some other similarities in terms of attitudes. Muslim Americans, by and large, tend to be more conservative on social issues while being more liberal on foreign policy matters. So, for example, Muslim Americans are somewhat more conservative on the issue of homosexuality than the general public, where 39% of US Muslims believe that homosexuality should be accepted by society versus 58% of the general public. All right. They are also slightly more conservative than the general public when it comes to abortion. 48% believe it should be illegal in all or most cases, compared with 43% of the general population. In addition, Muslim Americans are more likely than the general public to believe that the federal government should do more to protect morality in society, 59% versus 37%. So there could be an ally in Muslims between Christians, particularly more conservative Christians, which tend to be the Christians that are in many ways the ones that are the most racist or find the most harm in Muslims or have the most negative sentiments when it comes to Muslims, not realizing that they have more in common than they think they do. So this is extremely important because when we add on this notion of racialization, we start to see how even faith groups can become part of this racial discourse, this racial conversation. Okay. So what I would like for you to do, you have two things to complete this week. You have your quiz that you need to complete. You also have this discussion question. So what I want you to do is I want you to go to page 116, religion and identity. And I want you to look at number 2. What is the role of religious beliefs in shaping your own political values and ideas? And what misconceptions do others have of you based on your own religious or non-religious identity? Okay. So this is a very kind of introspective question, but I want you to show that you understand what we've been talking about by using pieces of information from the readings and or lecture in your response. Okay, so I don't want you to just say how you feel. That's great. I love to read how you feel. I think it does bring our conversations together. It helps me understand you a little bit more. You understand each other a little more. But you also need to be utilizing the material that you're reading, utilizing the material that we're talking about. So if you want to get the best grade on your discussion questions, I need to see how you're using, and don't just take a quote and then just throw it in there, because I'm starting to give less and less points for that. I kind of let it slide the first time or two, but now it's just like, all right, like actually engage with the material. Actually show me that you understand what we're talking about and actually integrate it into your discussion. Show me some depth of thought. So now I'm going to start getting more more strict, not strict, but yeah, kind of strict, or expect more out of you in these discussions. So if I'm not really getting deep thought or really seeing how you're grappling with the material and how you're applying it in like a strong way, you'll probably get like a C or a D on the discussions. But if I can see, if I'm convinced that you're really doing a good job with it, then you'll get like an A or a B. So yeah, like really kind of, use this material, really use what we're talking about, really use the readings and then apply it. Okay. Apply it to your own life. That's the purpose of all of this. So I really want to see you playing, you grappling with this. And because I can't really do it in person, because we're not in person or I can't hear you talking these things through, I got to be able to read it. So I definitely want to see that happening. So the instructions for that, it's in your I was gonna say resume. It's in your syllabus, but it's also here as well. So make sure you follow these instructions. And this is to be done before 11:59 p.m. on March 4th. All right. Any other questions? Reach out to me during office hours. You can come in office hours, or you can email me or inbox me, and I'll do my best to get back with you at my earliest convenience. Hope you have a great day, great week, great weekend. See you soon.